Hi guys, it's Lynn here. Hope everyone is having an amazing day. Now today guys, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can care for Tillandsia xerographica. And this is the queen or king of the Tillandsia air plants. Now I was going to do just an all-round how to care for Tillandsia air plants video, but because a lot of the air plants do require sort of different conditions, particularly this type of Tillandsia, I've decided to do a bit of a series on how to care for individual Tillandsias and probably put in a different type of Tillandsia up either once a week or once every 2 weeks. And no better one to start off with than as I say, the queen and king of Tillandsia air plants, the xerographica. So here we go guys, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this amazing air plant and also how you can care for it. So then, xerographica. Now the name, what a name guys. Xero is means dry, and graphica is Greek for writing, which is where the name xerographica has come from. And this particular Tillandsia, unlike many of the other type of Tillandsia air plants, does prefer a more of a desert sort of dry atmosphere than the other type of Tillandsias, such as the ones that we've got here on our moss pole that like a lot more regular watering and humidity. Now we have this particular xerographica here in our bathroom. It's in a south facing frosted window, so although it's south facing so it gets sun, it's going to be protected from the harsh sun, but I'm going to talk a bit about the lighting in a minute. But this particular xerographica here that we have, we do treat it different to many of our other Tillandsias in that we have a completely different watering schedule with this one because it does like more drier conditions. But here we go, I'm going to talk to you about this plant first of all, and also the individual care requirements such as lighting, temperature, watering, feeding, etc. Now, Tillandsia xerographica is part of the bromeliad family, which all Tillandsia air plants are. This is a bromeliad here that we also have some of our air plants in, and here very, very commonly seen for sale in garden centres. It's part of the family because of the flowers, but completely different care, obviously, as bromeliads like to have the water put through their funnels, and Tillandsias like to be either soaked or thoroughly sprayed with water, which I'm going to explain about in a minute. Now the xerographica is from Mexico, Guatemala and Salvador, and it grows in semi-arid regions in very dry and sunny conditions, and it's very drought tolerant air plant. And as I say, this one can go quite a while without any type of water, unlike the other Tillandsias that do need to be regularly watered, soaked or thoroughly sprayed sort of at least once or twice a week, depending on many different conditions, which again is a whole new subject. This is just about this particular type of Tillandsia. But as I say, semi-arid regions, so it likes a nice dry atmosphere with far less humidity than the normal Tillandsias do. And it typically grows as an epiphyte on trees in its natural habitats in the semi-arid regions of Mexico, Guatemala and Salvador. And the roots here, we've got these lovely little roots on there, they only offer support for this xerographica when it's growing on the trees. They don't use their roots to take up water or moisture, unlike some of the other epiphytes. They use it purely just to support themselves on these trees. And they take all their nutrients and water up from the air via the many trichomes in their leaves. And in nature, xerographica takes moisture from the morning dews that they get in the semi-arid regions and the occasional rains. Now, if you want to know what the hell a trichome is, it's one of these many, see the lovely little white coating on this xerographica, and you see this on many of the Tillandsias. These, if you were to magnify them many times, they have tiny little scales, which are called trichomes, and that's where they're taking the moisture from the air and their nutrients as well from both the water and the air in their environment. So completely different to normal plants that use their roots to take in nourishment. So that's a little bit about this xerographica. Now I'm going to talk about the care. Now the lighting. Now this particular Tillandsia, the xerographica, needs very bright light, and it can take both indirect bright light and also sunshine. Now, xerographica can take more sun than many of the other air plants due to the many trichomes they have. Usually the paler, the lighter colour the Tillandsia, the more sun it can take, as the xerographica is more like a silvery light green colour. And the ideal position for this Tillandsia would be in a window that receives maybe 2 to 3 hours sunshine a day. But even if you don't have a sunny window, if you're bright, very bright position with indirect sun would also do. They can take both sun and indirect, but keep it away from very intense, strong sun if you're growing behind glass, unless you can give adequate ventilation. And it would still do well in a sunny all-day window. Obviously, if you can give it plenty of ventilation, and if it's very, very bright, say the midday sun in the spring and summer, then you can provide a little bit of shade cloth over the window that allows light to come through, but more indirect light. If you have an extremely sunny window and you live in an extremely sunny climate. And if you have no natural available light and you only really have sort of a dull window, then I would recommend probably putting an additional grow light as well, because these particular Tillandsias, as I say, need extra light, extra bright light than a lot of many other ones do. So if you don't have a very bright window and position to place your xerographica, then I recommend using additional grow lights on for a few hours a day to give this particular Tillandsia a bit of a top up. Now, watering. Now, as I say, this xerographica needs to be watered much less than any of the other Tillandsias. So obviously they can go a lot longer without water, but like all plants, they all need water. That, it's a myth to think air plants only grow in air. They don't. They need water, nutrients, like any other type of plant does. Now, there's two ways of watering these. Now, one is you could just give it I wouldn't recommend soaking this particular Tillandsia, the xerographica, because, as I say, they do like to be kept more arid than the other Tillandsias do. So whereas other Tillandsias, you can soak them for half an hour in a bucket of water and then shake them off and then let them dry maybe once or twice a week, depending on your humidity and type of environment where you're growing your plants, your Tillandsias. This one does not like to be soaked. So I would recommend, personally, how I do this one is I thoroughly spray it, usually possibly about once every 1 to 2 weeks only. And it depends, in the summertime when it's very warm, then I'll probably give this a thorough soaking with a spray water of rainwater once a week, so the water's absolutely dripping off it. But in the winter time, I probably will leave it every 2 weeks. If it's very dry in the winter and we have the air conditioning, so the central heating on, and it does need a bit more of water, then I'll probably do it twice a week. But usually once every 2 weeks is more than ample. As I say, it really does depend. You will know when the xerographica is in need of water, because the leaves will start to go very, very curly. And this doesn't harm the xerographica because they can go a long time without watering, as I say. But you'll know when it is hydrated. In this case, the lovely big leaves here are quite firm, and they're also quite straightish, so it's very well hydrated. But when this starts to go very, very, very curly, then I know it's in need of a very good water soaking with the spray bottle, and that's a good indicator. If you like the more curly leaves, then you can sort of go longer in between watering, but this is usually a good indication that it's well hydrated. Now, it's very important, although I thoroughly spray this with a spray bottle, I actually and I'm not going to do it actually in this video because I did only do it the other day. I take this out, I actually put this into the sink here, thoroughly spray it with rainwater upside down. In other words, I don't spray it directly like this, and I'm going to explain why. I turn it upside down, thoroughly soak it, so both the underneath and the top is dripping, so it's dripping with rainwater, not just misting, dripping with rainwater. And then once it is thoroughly soaked, I'll then give it a shake and then leave it to drain upside down on a clean towel, and then I'll put it back up in here again, and then it dries usually within 30 minutes. Now, the reason why I wouldn't recommend spraying this from the top is because the water will come down and collect in the funnels here, and unlike traditional type of bromeliads that have water in the funnels, if water collects in this particular Tillandsia, the xerographica, then it can form rot. So that's why I always take this out, turn it upside down when I thoroughly spray it, and then I give it a good shake, let it dry on the well, you can use a paper towel, but usually use a towel, and then upside down. Then once it's given it a good shake and it's dried, more or less dried, I then put it back again so it's dry then in about 30 minutes. Never let water gather in here. It's very, very dangerous for these particular Tillandsias. So I'd never recommend soaking the xerographica in water like they recommend for the other type of Tillandsias. And if you can't use rainwater, if you've got no clean rainwater, then you can use filtered or bottled water, but never ever use distilled, because distilled water, it takes nutrients actually from the plants. So if you're spraying this with distilled water, it will actually take nutrients from the leaves and your plant will eventually die. So only ever use rainwater or filtered water. You can use bottled water as well. You can also use, there's some people, it's very controversial with tap water. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it because tap water is too high in nutrients, and it can sometimes, especially with lime and things like that, can block the trichomes and stop the plant from taking up its nutrients. But if you've only got tap water, as long as it's not too high in lime and not too high of a pH, then you can leave it to sit for about 24 hours before then using on your Tillandsias. Now then, yep, as I say, high in lime, it's very bad, so avoid that. 24 hours, let it sit if you haven't got rainwater. Now feeding. Now with the xerographica, it's not 100% essential that you have to feed the xerographica, and even all Tillandsias. If you're using rainwater, it's usually quite high in natural nutrients, even from the air and that's sometimes enough to get your Tillandsias to flourish. But if you want to give them a bit of an extra boost, you can maybe once a month use a special Tillandsia air plant fertilizer. And do not, this is absolutely paramount, that when you feed your Tillandsias, do not use houseplant feed or any other feed. Only use one that's especially for Tillandsias. And I'm going to put a link up above now to a video I've made on what I use to feed my Tillandsias and the type of special Tillandsia feed. But as long as it states it's safe for air plants, Tillandsias, then you're okay to use it. The reason being is that many other type of fertilizers, houseplant fertilizers, are high, well, they contain copper. And copper will kill your Tillandsias. It's very poisonous to them and toxic, so that is totally essential. I cannot stress that enough. You have to use air plant Tillandsia fertilizer only for these plants and not any other type of house plant fertilizer. And as I say, once a month is more than ample to feed these plants from spring and summer. You don't need to feed them at all during the winter months at all. Now the temperature. Now with xerographica, they like a lot more warmth than some of the other Tillandsias do. I mean, they're all tropical plants, so you know, they're obviously none of them could take frost. But this particular one, as I say, is a semi-arid grower in its natural habitat. It likes warmth, and I would recommend a minimum temperature of 15 Celsius. Which is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything, and a maximum temperature of about 30 Celsius, which would be about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's over 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, try and give plenty of ventilation. If you have it in a window, have a window open so there's fresh air coming through, because otherwise, like any plant, they can cook if it gets too hot, and then they can burn. So ventilation is important there. So I would say a temperature between 15 to 30 Celsius, which is 55 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Now when it comes to humidity, the xerographica, as I say, grows in a semi-arid environment in its natural habitat, completely different to a lot of the other Tillandsias that like more of a humid type of environment. And that ideally in nature, their environment will be about 60 to 72% humidity. Now, a lot of homes will be a lot drier than this, depending on where you're living, obviously, but with central heating and things like that, homes can be sometimes 30% humidity, anything from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60. So they're still in a lot more of a drier environment in the house. So it's, as I say, it's always important to keep an eye on the leaves, and if they go extremely curly with the xerographica, it's a sign that it's not getting enough humidity or it needs another good water. Now, as I say, good air circulation is absolutely essential with xerographica, as it is with all Tillandsias. And when it comes to using a closed terrarium, you sometimes see Tillandsias in terrariums that have a lid on them. That's a death trap, because without the ventilation they will definitely rot. So especially with xerographica, because it is more of an arid Tillandsia, so it's paramount you don't put them in. Personally, I would avoid terrariums completely, but if you do have this in any type of terrarium, make sure it's completely open, an open terrarium where it can get plenty of ventilation around it. And also, while I'm on the thing about airflow and ventilation, when you have Tillandsias, this isn't just xerographica, this is all Tillandsias. For example, this is in our bathroom, and this is a dry bathroom compared to a lot of bathrooms, why we have that here. But a lot of people would use bathrooms and kitchens as well, where they'd use lots of cooking and things like that. Bathrooms, they'd be using deodorant sprays, body sprays, perfumes, and also in kitchens they'd be using special cooking fats and things like that. These will give off molecules that can stick to the trichomes, which is their little, as I say, the little scales on these air plants. It's very dangerous. If you've got air plants of any type in a bathroom or kitchen, be careful what you spray. And I would actually, if you use spray deodorants, perfumes, don't spray it around these plants. Walk into a completely different room away to use them products, because that can be very dangerous for Tillandsias. So I have to just mention that as well. Now, flowering. Now, because xerographica is a very slow growing, it can take many years before they can ready to bloom, and they need to be a mature size before they can bloom. But many that are grown, obviously, in the horticultural commercial industry here, bloom a lot earlier than that, because they're sort of forced into growth a lot quicker, and takes a lot less time. But they normally need to be, as I say, many years before they can flower in their natural habitats. And the blooms are very bright, vibrant, of orange, red and yellow, and they come up on a large tall flower bract that goes up to 15 inches high, and they usually flower from about 8 years up. So that'd be great to see this one in flower one day in the future, and when I do, I'll make a video. It'd be very exciting to see. Now, propagation is from the pups that's formed after flowering. Now, the main mother plant here, the xerographica, this will eventually, when it does form, once it's flowered, it will then start to die back, and pups will take over. And so that's obviously propagated from pups, which is the most common way with Tillandsias. As you can see here, there's a little pup forming on this one too, and look at this as well. This is a lovely one there, the lovely pup form, and also the pup is coming into flower. Absolutely amazing. And the same with the xerographica, will form pups, and then the big mother plant will eventually die back. Now, you can also propagate from seeds from the flower. If the flower gets pollinated and produces seeds, then that can also be propagated that way. But seedlings take a very long time, obviously, to grow up to a decent size. And when xerographica seeds have germinated, the seedlings take up to about 3 to 4 years to resemble the xerographica shape. When they first germinate, they look very much like typical normal air plants in their shape, and then after 3 to 4 years, then they take the traditional xerographica form. And pruning. Now, with pruning, you just snip off any dry brown ends, and I have made a video on how to prune Tillandsia air plants, so do check that out. Links up above, and at the end of this video, you just prune back any of the dry tips on there with a clean pair of scissors or pruning shears. Usually nail scissors are great for getting the little tips done. And that's pretty much it, guys. So there you go. That's how to care for Tillandsia xerographica, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So guys, I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness, and tons of plant power from across the Emerald Isle. And until my next video, bye. Bye. And don't forget to subscribe.